How's it going, YouTube? I'm Tomlin Sherry, and this is Chocolate Avenue Baking Company. And as I'm sure you've already ascertained from the title of the video, today we're going to be working on an absolute classic tiramisu. And now everyone and their Italian grandma has their own recipe for tiramisu. But I actually did a little digging into the history of tiramisu, and I found a website that's actually dedicated from Italy, of course. It's dedicated to tiramisu, and it has an interesting history that I wasn't aware of. It's definitely, tiramisu always ranks like in the top 5 of everyone's favorite restaurant desserts. So I actually wanted to know, like, how long has it been around, the history of it, yada yada. So I found this website dedicated to it called academiadeltiramisu.com. And they take their tiramisu extremely serious over there in Italy. It comes from a city called Treviso, which is in the northern part of the boot, northeast of the boot, near Venice. It looks really beautiful on the photos. I've never been there, unfortunately, but now the etymology of the word tiramisu is a derivation of the Treviso dialect tiramisu, and if you speak Italian, I'm sorry, I don't, but the meaning, according to this website, is lift me, strengthen my body. Everyone always says pick me up. I don't know, that this is just what this site says, so take it with as you will. The original tiramisu, according to these guys, contained only 6 main ingredients: ladyfingers, or what they call SAVOIARDI biscuits, mascarpone cheese, coffee or espresso. The website, the original recipe, actually just lists strong coffee, cocoa powder, egg yolks, and granulated sugar. Okay. Now, as I said, there's lots of different stories that have floated around, apparently, of where tiramisu originated from. But according to this website, the true version is actually very interesting. And like I said, I did not know this. But so the most interesting of all of these says that the true tiramisu states the following. Okay, this is a direct quote of where the origin history of tiramisu is. A verbal local tradition has handed down to us that our dessert would have been designed by a brilliant maitresse, if that's how you say that, of a pleasure house located in the historic center of Treviso, Italy. Now, apparently a pleasure house means it was a brothel / restaurant, I'm gathering from this. So, like I said, very interesting. Now, this goes back to 1800, the year 1800. So this is a long time ago. The Signora owner of the restaurant would have created this sweet aphrodisiac and invigorating to offer it to her customers at the end of the evening in order to reinvigorate them and solve the problems related to marital duties at the time of their return to the family. All right, so that's it is said that in the room when the men went downstairs a little tired, a handsome maitresse prepared this dessert and admonished them in this way: Adesso Vetero Sumi. The origin, that's where supposedly the origin of tiramisu comes from. Anyway, I could not find a translation of Adesso Vetero Sumi. Google Translate translates it as now I pull me. So I have no idea what that means. If you speak Italian and you understand what I just said, please leave a comment below. But other than that, yes, it's an absolutely fabulous dessert here in the United States. It's been popular pretty much my entire working career as a pastry chef. So I know people love this dessert, and it's, even though it's very simple, it's actually, there's only 6 main ingredients, but there's some tricks to it that I'm going to show you. And so let's get started, and we'll go through this recipe. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to start on here are these lady fingers, otherwise known as SAVOIARDI biscuits. Now, I make my own. Obviously, it's much easier just to buy lady fingers at the grocery store. They're pretty widely available these days. I see several brands out there now. So, to make this a lot easier on yourself, you could just buy the lady fingers and use those. It's fine. Obviously, if you have time and you really want to make these from scratch, I'll briefly touch on them here. This is a piped cookie, a lot kind of like piping pâte choux. Actually, is what it reminds me of. So just to make things easier and move along faster, I'm going to leave all of the weights, measures, and all of that in ounces, grams, cups, and so forth down in the description box so that we can put this together a little quicker. I have some eggs here. These are fresh, organic, free-range eggs, and they're separated at room temperature. I've got some sifted flour here, some sifted cornstarch, which we'll sift that again, and some granulated sugar. And so now, how this goes together is take your egg yolks. We're going to just put in, I believe this is 6 ounces of granulated sugar. I'm going to take 1/3 of that first, and we're just going to whisk that up till it's nice and creamy. Whisk up those egg yolks till they lighten in color and they're nice and creamy for you. So, also, now that I'm thinking about it, this is totally optional. I'm just going to, I can't help myself with the vanilla extract. Just a little bit. That was probably 1/2 teaspoon. And also, at this stage in the yolks, I'm just going to put a pinch of salt. Again, the recipe doesn't really call for salt. I think it's a cookie. It needs a little bit of salt. It's just a pinch. Now, this recipe that I'm doing is going to make a lot of lady fingers. But as with everything, it's better to have a little too much than not enough. Not sure if I'm going to make 1 or 2 pans yet of the tiramisu. But just whisk that up till it's pale. Set that to the side. And now take your egg whites, and we're going to place those in. And now I'm going to take another 1/3 or 2 ounces of sugar and add that into the meringue as it's whipping. And for lady fingers, it's important that you, first of all, your egg whites are at room temperature, warm. And you want these at a pretty stiff peak. You want to take these to the edge where, a very stiff peak so that the cookies can hold their shape. So what I have here is a little bit of tartaric acid solution. And that is just, I think I have about a quarter of a teaspoon of cream of tartar in there and some very hot water. That's all that is. And it's just a good way to stabilize your egg whites. So we're going to whip these up, add a little bit of sugar, and then I'll show you how these cookies go together. So the next step is, after you've got stiff peaks, egg whites, they shouldn't come out of the bowl at all. They're stiff, right? You're getting pretty stiff peaks. The next thing we're going to do is we'll put this back onto the stand mixer. And what I'm going to do here first is sift the remaining 2 ounces of the sugar with the cornstarch. So we're going to sift that together. I'm going to continue whisking and slowly put in the cornstarch and sugar till you get a nice stiff set mixture. So when you're done incorporating the cornstarch, your meringue should be nice and stiff. So first thing we're going to do now is fold in the yolk, sugar, and vanilla mix that we whisked up earlier. And definitely your best tool for this is going to be your rubber spatula. So that's it. You're just going to fold that in. And now once it looks completely homogeneous and there's no streaks of the egg yolk in there left, now lastly we're just going to fold the rest of this, or the flour here. So that's what you end up with, basically like that. That's your SAVOIARDI ladyfinger mix. Okay, so you definitely do want to work with this batter fast. So have your convection oven or oven preheated to 425 and should get probably about 2 trays out of this recipe. And I'm just going to pipe about, I don't know, 3.5 inch cookies here. So the last thing you want to do then is just dust these with a generous coating of confectioner sugar and throw these directly into your hot oven. Okay, so just one other quick little tip on these biscuits is, if you are planning on using these the same day you're baking them, then what I like to do, after about 10 minutes, I'll just cut the heat and let them set in there for 15-20 minutes. Just make sure they don't burn, and so they dry out, so when we soak these in the coffee and the rum, they're going to soak that up. Otherwise, you can just take them out, and you'll have to let them set at least for a day or so. If you're not planning on assembling the dessert right off the bat, then you can just let them set out on the counter for a day, 24-36 hours, and they'll dry out. Okay, so now that we've got them biscuits out of the way, let's start on our mascarpone cream. So this is the thing that is so special about tiramisu. Once you have your ladyfingers done, it goes together fairly simple. But one thing I recommend is use real espresso. Unfortunately, I used to have an espresso machine. It broke. I never replaced it, but I found this This is called Lavazza Espresso. Maybe you have your favorite brand. So the way I get around not having an espresso machine is I have 2 cups of filtered water heating over here on the burner, and 2-3 cups. You don't have to measure anything. I mean, if you want to, I'll leave a measurement down in the description box. But really, just what you're trying to do here is create some strong flavored coffee. If you don't have espresso, just use your favorite coffee, whatever you drink. Just make it extra strong. Now, I think for tiramisu, though, if you're making this for something special, use the espresso. But the way that I get around not having an espresso machine is what I have here is a double layer of cheesecloth. And you can usually find cheesecloth in the baking aisle of your grocery store, of the Mega Marts anyway. And now, in here I'm going to put enough espresso to make 2 cups of water, 2 to 3 cups of water, a strong espresso. I'm going to put 3 of these like soup spoon things, maybe a little more. I like strong flavors. And this tiramisu is for me. I'm not making this for anyone but this guy right now. So now, with that, what I'm going to do is kind of just try my best to get a nice sort of sachet on that, is what you would call that. And now I'm just going to try to tighten that up with some baker's twine here. Make it as tight as you can. So just tie that up nice and tight. And most, especially very like commercial espresso grind is extremely fine. So that's why it's a fine grind. So that's why I'm using a double layer, and then I'll strain it again, so that there's absolutely no way we're getting any grinds on our lady fingers. So then just plop that in that hot water and brew that for, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 minutes. And we're going to strain it again, as I said, into a half pan and add some alcohol to it in a few minutes. I've given our espresso a little bit of time to reduce slightly on a simmer, just to concentrate that nice coffee flavor, the deep dark kind of. Espresso's a little bit on the bitter side, I would say. So I'll let it reduce slightly like this, and now I'm going to strain it through yet another piece of cheesecloth here into a half pan, just to cool this down quickly. Now, the 2 most traditional alcohols that I find out there that people use most often is the Marsala wine. I think is the most traditional, which I'm not real crazy about the flavor of that. It's a fortified wine. It's okay. It's definitely traditional, or rum. You should probably use the dark rum. This is just some of the Bacardi Gold that I have left over here. But to this, this is reduced now to probably 1.5 to 2 cups there. You're supposed to add 3 tablespoons of rum. Another one I did also hear, a lot of people like to put amaretto in there instead. So, but I'm using this rum, and we're going to put 3 tablespoons here of the rum into the hot coffee. So just 3 tablespoons. Oh, how did that happen? I might as well use it all. 3 tablespoons, my ass. Okay. Now to that, just probably, I don't know, since I'm in love with good vanilla, so like most pastry chefs, I'm a little crazy about vanilla. All right, I just put a half teaspoon in there or something like that. Now, it's getting late in the day, and I just want to get this dessert done so I can have some tomorrow, because this does have to set up overnight in the refrigerator for it to set properly. So I'm going to put this in the freezer just for a while, because this coffee solution has to be stone cold before you dip your lady fingers in this, because if you try to dip your lady fingers in this hot, they're just going to fall apart. So make sure you chill this down. Okay, so we have our coffee and rum mixture chilling, and now we're going to finish this mascarpone cream. Now, mascarpone generally these days is pretty widely available at any decent supermarket. I'm using something called Belgioso mascarpone. It is really nice. It's an Italian mascarpone, really nice. Full fat, and I have, I think, 20 ounces here, but again, I'm going to just leave all of the measurements and all that stuff down in the description box. So one thing, you want this at room temperature, of course. It's sort of like cream cheese, but milder. It's not as tangy. It's really delicious, and it's a luscious flavor to it. And now I just have to touch on the eggs too real quick. I'm using the best eggs I can find at the market, organic free range eggs here. Now, if I were making this for anyone else but me, I would definitely pasteurize these. You have to separate your eggs and your yolks and your whites out, and I would pasteurize these separately. And it sounds difficult, it's really not. You just put it into a bowl over some barely simmering water. You don't want to scramble it, and just bring it to 160 degrees. Best to use an instant read thermometer. Take it off, let it at 160 for maybe 30 seconds to a minute, and then take it off, and you can continue your recipe. Last thing you want to do is make somebody sick, and when it comes to pregnant women, elderly, small children, you definitely don't want to be serving a raw egg tiramisu. But again, it's traditional to serve it with making it fresh like this. That's how I'm going to do it. I think it tastes better myself. But again, if I were making this for other people, I definitely should pasteurize this just to be safe, even though it's supposed to only, I think the USDA says 1 in 20,000. Shell eggs may have a little bit of the salmonella left. So there's my disclaimer about that. So the first thing that we are going to do is I'm going to take these egg yolks and put that into, I'm going to put about a teaspoon of vanilla in there. And I'm also, into the egg yolk, I'm going to put another pinch of salt. And I'm also, I have a few ounces of sugar here. I'm going to put some of the sugar in here as well. So then you just want to start working that softened room temperature mascarpone in there. Probably take you a few additions, maybe with 20 ounces. It'll take me about 3 additions there. Just work that into the yolk. With each addition, you just Make sure that there's no lumps. You want to incorporate that soft, creamy cheese into the yolk completely. So once you have your eggs and your yolks and your mascarpone well incorporated, it should be almost like a very light pale yellow color if you're using good eggs. And I'm going to transfer this to a larger bowl to make the final process a little easier. Okay, so then once you have your mascarpone and yolks combined, we're going to make a simple meringue here. Room temperature egg whites, as always. So again, with this meringue, I'm going to add a little bit of this tartaric acid solution, just a few drops to stabilize it. And that'll help it set up nice to a stiff peak. And then while that meringue is whipping, we're just going to gradually stream in the rest of the sugar. So you want these peaks to be stiff but not dry. So last but not least, we're going to take a large rubber spatula here and we're going to fold in these whites about in 3 installments. Just work the meringue into your cheese mixture until all of the white streaks disappear, and just keep this at room temperature while you're getting ready to assemble the final tiramisu, and set that to the side. So now it's time for the fun part, which is the assembly of all of your hard work. So we have our cold SAVOIARDI biscuits here. We've got the cooled down coffee and rum and vanilla mixture, and we have our mascarpone cream over here. And so now I found these cool disposable baking dishes so online. You can get these, they're kind of fancy foil type thing, and comes with a lid, and you can so you could give your tiramisu away to friends or whatever. Now there's probably no reason to really worry about buttering the pan, but yeah, you know, better safe than sorry, I guess you could say. So I'm just going to run a little of this butter over the bottom here and the sides of this pan. You can definitely use a 13 by 9 or 12 by 8 or rectangle, or a lot of people I see like to do these in like fancy little teacups. You can just, you know, like a trifle kind of a thing where you put a couple cookies and some of this cream. This cream is absolutely delicious. So now the trick with this though is this is layered, but you don't want to. These are nicely dried out now, so that's the way you want them. So like I said, either let them set out for a day or two, or you know, put it in a warm oven and let them dry out. But you just give these 2 to 3 seconds in here, not long. You do not want to. You don't want these soggy, falling apart. But if they're dried, they'll hold together better for you. But I would give them about, like I said, 2-3 seconds at the most. Just enough to get them that flavor in there. And if you let this set overnight, wow, I mean the taste on this dessert is unreal. You can get away with, if you're in a hurry, you can get away with letting this just set up in the refrigerator for, I wouldn't give it any less than about 3-4 hours. It's going to be way better. It's going to come together more like a dessert if you give this overnight. But it needs to be served within like 2 days or so of making this. You don't want to be, this is not a long range planning type of situation. You want to make it, serve it the next day for, you know, Sunday dinner or whatever you're going to do. But I'm going to bring you over here, I think, just so you can see how I layer this up. Okay, so now it's the next afternoon and our tiramisu was given a full 24 hours to set up in the refrigerator. And I've just made my afternoon cup of coffee, so as they say in Italy, it's time for my afternoon pick-me-up. So we're going to give this tiramisu a try. And as you can see, I've made quite a mess all over the counter here, trying to get that first piece out, but then the first piece is always the hardest, but then you're rewarded with this. So let's give this a shot, and I'm going to let you know what I think. Let's see here. First impressions, you can really smell the rum, of course, and the chocolate, cocoa, and coffee, just as it's supposed to be. Yes, that is very nice. Definitely, you can tell it's real and not made with a bunch of junk. The the SAVOIARDI biscuits in there have maintained their texture, and so you still can tell that there's biscuit in there. Along with that excellent milk chocolate, this is really delicious. It's definitely an upgrade to your afternoon coffee, I would say. Very delicious dessert. I garnish it with more of the chocolate. If you're a chocolate fiend like me, definitely put plenty of chocolate on it. I've even put little squares of that milk chocolate on each portion. And if you're doing this exact recipe, I ended up deciding to slice this into 9. So it's 9, as you can see, a nice adult sized portion. So if you're planning, you know, a party or something, plan accordingly. If you have to make more, make another pan. But Yes, very delicious. Obviously, one other thing I wanted to mention, if you're making this for children, you can certainly not put the rum in it or any alcohol because the recipe will work just fine without it. But I hope you guys will give this a shot, and if you try it and like it, please leave me a comment below. And yeah, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one.